You can stay here, but don't tell anyone you're my mom. That was what my son told me. Before we get into the story, tell us in the comment section where you are watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your honest review. They say you never stop being a mother. Even when your child no longer wants to be your child. Even when he looks you in the eye and says something so cold, so sharp, that it slices through the years of sacrifice and love like a hot knife through paper. That's what happened the day I showed up at my son's door. Desperate, broke, and clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he still had a sliver of love left for me. Turns out, he didn't. Not in the way that mattered. I hadn't seen Derek in almost 3 years. We spoke occasionally, birthdays, holidays, the occasional text. But life had created distance, and shame had built the wall between us. He was doing well, very well. A software architect for some fancy startup in the city. Lived in one of those glass and steel apartments where everything echoed and smelled like new money. I wasn't supposed to need help. That's the role I always played, the giver, not the beggar. But after I got laid off from the school district and the bills started to pile up and the rent notice turned pink, I didn't have a choice. I called him from the train station, told him I was in town, told him I needed a place to stay for a while. There was a long pause. Then he said, "Okay, you can come by. But let's keep this quiet. I've got a reputation in this building. Don't tell anyone you're my mom." I said nothing at first. I should have said, "Forget it." I should have hung up. But I didn't. Because the truth is, sometimes a mother's love doesn't scream or slam doors. Sometimes it just swallows the pain and keeps walking. When I got to his building, the doorman looked me up and down like I was lost. I didn't blame him. I wasn't dressed like the women in the lobby. I had one rolling suitcase, a tote bag, and my pride zipped up tightly in my coat pocket. Derek met me in the lobby, eyes darting like he was hoping no one would see. "Come on," he said quickly. "Let's go before anyone notices." Not, "Hi, Mom." Not, "You look tired." Just urgency and embarrassment. The place was cold. Not the temperature, no, it was set to a perfect 72 degrees. But everything else, the sterile gray walls, the chrome fixtures, the spotless countertop with nothing out of place, it felt like walking into a catalog. Not a home. There were no photos, no signs of the boy I raised, just minimalist furniture and a $300 coffee machine that hissed at me when I looked at it wrong. I remembered the little boy who used to curl up next to me on our beat-up couch, who cried the night I missed his school play because I was working a double shift. I remembered the science fair projects, the scraped knees, the late nights at the hospital when he had asthma attacks. I gave him everything I had, and now he gave me rules. "Look," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "It's just better if we say you're like a family friend. You know, a mentor from church or something. Some of my neighbors, they're kind of judgmental." I just nodded. Too tired to argue. Too stunned to process that my own son was ashamed of me. The next few days passed in silence. He left early for work, came back late, barely said 10 words to me. I kept the apartment clean, cooked when I could, stayed in the spare room like a ghost. Sometimes he brought people over, coworkers, friends. Each time, I vanished into the background like furniture. One night, I overheard him telling someone, "Yeah, she's just a family friend, from back home, helping her get back on her feet." He said it like I was a stray cat he had taken in. I wanted to scream, but instead, I smiled when they passed by and I said nothing. Because sometimes silence is more powerful than rage. I started to learn things. Things about him I didn't know. Like how he was angling for a promotion at work. How he bragged about making it out of the gutter. How he liked to say he pulled himself up by his own bootstraps. Funny. I don't remember him tying those boots himself when I was working double shifts and selling my wedding ring to pay for his laptop. On the third night, I found a photo in his drawer while looking for a charger. It was from his college graduation. I was in it, standing behind him, beaming. But the photo had been torn. My half was missing. I didn't cry. I just stared at the half that remained. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Not out of vengeance, not even anger, but clarity. I had spent my life giving, quietly, patiently, endlessly. But I wasn't a ghost. I wasn't his secret. And if he couldn't remember who I was, then maybe it was time I reminded him. That night, when he went out for drinks, I made a phone call. my voice calm, steady. Yes, I said. I want to move forward with the purchase, full price, all cash. A pause on the other end. No, I don't want my name on the paperwork, not yet. I smiled as I hung up. Let him have his little kingdom. For now. He didn't know it yet, but the building he was so proud of was about to have a new owner. And this time, I wouldn't be sleeping in the guest room. And trust me, the rent's about to come due. The funny thing about shame is that it changes nothing, except how people treat you. Derek's shame hadn't made me any less of a mother. It hadn't erased the sleepless nights or the years of sacrifice, but it made him forget. Forget where he came from. Forget who held him up when he couldn't even stand. So I decided, if he wanted to pretend I didn't exist, then I would become someone he couldn't ignore. It all started with one phone call. An old friend of mine, Charles, had gone into real estate after retiring from city planning. He was smart, sharp, and owed me a favor or two from back in the day. Charles, I said, keeping my voice steady, you mentioned a while ago that you were handling some downtown property investments, right? Yep, mostly mid-rise units near the tech hub. Good rental income. Why? Can you find out who owns 145 Wexler Avenue? There was a short pause. That's Derek's building, isn't it? I didn't answer. He didn't ask again. By the end of that week, I knew everything I needed to know. The building was owned by a small trust that was trying to quietly liquidate assets. No public listing, no bidding war. They just wanted a fast sale. Charles worked his magic. By the next Friday, I signed the final document and wired the funds. And just like that, I owned the building my son lived in, the same building where he asked me not to call him my son. You would think I felt triumphant, like I had won. But the truth is, I didn't buy that building to get revenge. I bought it to remind myself that I still mattered, that I wasn't invisible. I needed to reclaim a part of myself that motherhood, no, his rejection, had buried. But what I didn't expect was how fast the power shifted. Derek had no idea. He was still living like a king, throwing rooftop parties, giving TED Talk-style speeches about self-made success. I watched quietly from behind the scenes as he boasted about his grind and discipline. He talked like the building he lived in was a symbol of his rise. Little did he know, the deed to that symbol now sat in my purse. Sometimes I walked the hallways when he was gone, just to feel the walls, to remind myself, this is mine now. I didn't act right away. That would have been too easy. Instead, I started small. The management company, still under Charles's direction, received a silent update from the new ownership. Tenants were notified of new ownership under an anonymous trust. A few minor renovations began. A few leases were revised. I even replaced the broken elevator panel Derek had been complaining about for months. Let him enjoy the perks of his mother's love in disguise. But it wasn't just about the building. It was about identity. Derek had erased me from his story. Now I was writing myself back in, with ink he couldn't wash away. I had a plan, but I needed to be patient. The lease on Derek's unit was coming up for renewal in 6 weeks, and when it did, I'd be ready. One evening, he came home while I was cleaning the kitchen. He seemed unusually cheerful. Guess what? He said, dropping his bag on the counter. I think they're giving me the promotion. Team lead, more money, corner office, finally getting recognized. I smiled. That's wonderful. He poured himself a drink. You know, I've been thinking. Might even buy this unit, you know? Get in before the prices jump. Place has been under new management lately, actually fixing stuff around here. It's about time. I stirred the soup quietly. Yes, it's about time. The next day, something unexpected happened. I was in the laundry room when a woman approached me. She looked to be in her late 60s, stylish, confident, kind eyes. I've seen you around, she said. You're Derek's mother, aren't you? I froze. Before I could respond, she smiled. I remember you from his graduation. You were so proud. I smiled weakly. Yes, I was. You're staying with him? Just for a little while. She nodded, then leaned in slightly. I don't mean to pry, but it's a shame the way he talks about his past, pretends it was all just hard work and hustle. I didn't respond. She put a gentle hand on my arm. We know better, don't we? That moment shifted something in me again. I wasn't just doing this for myself anymore. I was doing it for every parent who had been cast aside, every mother or father who was forgotten once the child made it. It was time for Derek to face the truth. not as a punishment, but as a lesson. 2 days before his lease expired, the property manager delivered his renewal contract. But this time, there was a change. Rent increase. Modest. Lease term. Standard. But at the bottom, just above the signature line, was one new requirement. Tenant must acknowledge full name of owner, Mrs. Linda M. Clark. It would be the first time he would write my name in years, with his own hand. On paper, tied to the very roof over his head. He hasn't opened the envelope yet. He left it on the counter, unopened, like it was just another bill. But tomorrow, he'll see it. And when he does, he'll realize. The mother he tried to erase now owns the floor beneath his feet. What happens when the secret you're hiding owns the keys to your future? There's a particular silence that falls over a house when truth is sitting quietly on the counter. That night, Derek left the lease renewal envelope untouched, like it was ticking. I watched it from across the room, like it was alive. He didn't even glance at it. It was funny. The same man who bragged about being in control of his life was too afraid to open a piece of paper, but I didn't push him. I knew the truth always opens itself, especially when it has your mother's name on it. The next morning, I was at the kitchen sink when I heard the tear of the envelope flap. I didn't turn around, just kept scrubbing the dishes, even though they were already clean. There was a pause, a long one. I could feel his eyes burning into the page, then his voice flat, like he was forcing control. "Did you do something to my lease?" I turned, wiping my hands slowly. "What do you mean?" He walked over, waving the contract. "It says the owner is you, Linda Clark, that you're the building's landlord." I met his stare. "That's right?" He froze. You bought the building?" "Yes. You mean this building? My building?" "Not yours. You rent here." He blinked like I had slapped him, then he laughed, nervous, short. "This is some kind of joke, right? You forged it? You couldn't afford a property like this." That stung, more than I cared to admit. I walked over to the drawer, pulled out the notarized ownership papers, and placed them gently in front of him. "Check the signature. Verify the date. Call the management company if you want." He didn't move. He didn't have to. Because deep down, he already knew. There it was. The unraveling. The mask he wore, the proud, polished, upwardly mobile version of himself, was slipping. And what was left underneath? A boy who had forgotten the hand that fed him. Until that hand owned the ceiling above his head. His voice cracked now, less confident, more wounded. "Why would you do this, Mom? To humiliate me?" "No, to remind you." "Remind me of what? That I needed help once?" "No," I said, holding his gaze. "To remind you that no matter how far you go, you don't erase where you came from." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. "This is insane. What do you want? You want me to leave?" I shook my head. "I want you to sign the lease." He looked at the bottom of the paper again. His hands trembled slightly as he read the new clause. "Tenant acknowledges landlord, Mrs. Linda M. Clark." He stared at it like it was written in fire. "That's why you did this," he whispered. "So you could force me to call you my mother." I said nothing, because yes and no. It wasn't about me. It was about him. About making him look in the mirror and say the name of the woman who gave him everything. He set the papers down with a hard thud. "I'm not signing that." I folded my arms. "Then you'll need to vacate within 30 days. "You're evicting your own son?" "No. I'm holding a grown man accountable." Silence stretched between us like a wire ready to snap. "I have nowhere to go," he said, the anger fading now, replaced by panic. "You have options," I replied. "Just not ones that allow you to live a lie anymore." I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to make him feel small. But I did want him to feel what I felt. When he pushed me into a guest room and told me to hide like I was something shameful. This wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition. Dignity. Truth. That afternoon I watched him storm out of the building. 2 hours later, Charles called me. He came in, asked if this was legal, asked if you were serious. "What did you tell him?" I told him the building was yours, and that the clause is perfectly valid. "Did he sign?" "No." I thanked Charles and hung up. That night, I sat on the balcony alone, watching the streetlights flicker. Part of me wanted to run back inside and tell him it didn't matter, that he could stay, that I was just hurt, that I loved him. But I stayed silent, because love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's steel. The next morning, I found a folded note on the kitchen table. 2 words, "I'm leaving." No goodbye, no apology, No signature, just gone. I thought that would be the end of it. Thought I would sit in that apartment alone, maybe cry a little, maybe feel some twisted version of victory. But later that night, there was a knock at the door. I opened it and froze. There, standing in the hallway, suitcase in hand, was someone else entirely. Someone I hadn't seen in over 20 years. He looked at me and said, "Linda, I heard you bought the building. We need to talk." Who is this mysterious visitor from Linda's past? And what secret does he bring that could change everything? The past has a strange way of showing up. Not with fanfare, not with warning, but with a suitcase and a tired smile. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at him. Gray at the temples now. Still tall. Still with that same half-smirk that once made my knees weak and my heart hurt. It was Michael. Derek's father. My ex-husband. The man who walked out of our lives 25 years ago and never looked back. I wanted to slam the door in his face. I wanted to scream. But mostly, I wanted to know why now? Why today, after Derek had just walked out? Why show up the very moment I was finally starting to breathe again? So I stepped aside and let him in. We sat in the same room where I had folded his son's lease, the same chair Derek refused to sign from. Michael looked around, whistling low. "You've done well for yourself, Linda." I stayed silent. "I heard through a friend in real estate you bought this place. I didn't believe it at first." "You came here to fact-check a property listing?" I asked, voice sharp. He shook his head. "No, I came because Derek showed up at my hotel last night." "What?" I blinked. "He went to you?" Michael nodded slowly. "He said he had nowhere else to go, said you threw him out." My throat tightened. "I gave him a choice. He made his own." "He's hurting, Linda," Michael said. "So am I. This man, this father who vanished before Derek's 3rd birthday, was now here, suddenly playing savior. But where was he when Derek needed school shoes? When I cried myself to sleep holding my child, wondering how I would buy dinner? Where was he when I worked 2 jobs and cleaned apartments in the very building I now owned?" Then Michael leaned forward, voice low. "I came to offer something." I narrowed my eyes. "Go on." "I have money, property, connections. Derek could come live with me, get back on his feet. So you came to rescue him?" He nodded. "And to ask if maybe I could help you too." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Help me?" "You've been alone too long, Linda. Maybe we could fix things." Suddenly it all became clear. He didn't come out of guilt. He came out of opportunity. The boy he abandoned grew into a man falling apart, and the woman he left behind? She had bought a building. He smelled stability, comfort, and maybe a chance to rewrite the story where he wasn't the villain. I stood up slowly and walked to the window, looking down at the street. Then I turned to him. "Michael, you don't get to rewrite history just because it's inconvenient. I'm trying to be a father." "You were never a father." He flinched. I walked to the door and opened it. "You want to help Derek? Then be honest with him. Tell him why you left. Tell him who you are. And then, leave." He stood, eyes burning with a shame I wasn't sure he fully understood. And without another word, he walked out. The door clicked shut, and I leaned against it. It was strange. I had spent years wondering what I would say if Michael ever came back. But when the moment finally came, I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel longing. I just felt tired and free. I thought that would be the last surprise for a while. But the next evening, as I was closing up the office downstairs, I heard the bell chime, and there he was. Derek. No suitcase this time. Just a man, worn out, hollow-eyed, but different, softer. He stepped forward slowly. "I met with Dad," he said quietly. "I know. He told me everything. The real reason he left, the gambling, the debt, the shame." He paused, voice catching. "And he told me how hard you fought for me." I nodded, words catching in my throat. He looked down at the lease still on my desk. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No," I said gently. "You don't." He swallowed hard. "But I would like to earn it, if that's still possible." He picked up the pen, hands shaking, and signed. "Derek Clark, tenant, landlord, Linda M. Clark." When he handed it back, his eyes were misty. "I'm proud to be your son," he whispered. And just like that, the silence that had once felt heavy with shame was now filled with something else. Peace. You can't rewrite the past, you can't undo the pain, but sometimes you get a second chance to acknowledge it, to own it, to sign your name next to the person who never stopped loving you. A few days later, I walked Derek to the front of the building. The maintenance team had just finished repainting the glass office panel. And there it was, in fresh gold letters. Clark Residence, property owned and managed by Linda M. Clark. Derek smiled at it, then looked at me. "You gonna let me work the front desk sometimes?" I smiled back. "Only if you wear the uniform," he groaned. I had to ask. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from forgetting, it comes from remembering who you are, and who stood beside you, even when you turned away. If this story moved you, if you've ever had a complicated family relationship or found strength in unexpected places, hit that subscribe button. Share this story, and remember, your name has power. Use it with pride.